I am Trish Glowacki. I am the executive director and founder of the Glow Media Project. At the Glow Media Project, we produce short films addressing various topics affecting today's youth. Our target audience is middle through high schoolers, their educators, and their families. And we create these films with full guides, curriculum, if you will, for educators, students, parents, and guardians in an effort to start the conversation about mental health in the home, in the classroom, and amongst each other, your peers. And so that's just a little bit of background about us. Our films and guides are available free of charge on our website, glowmedia.org. If you didn't pick up a flyer or a card in the lobby, please do so on your way out. And also pick up materials from our partner organization, Every Mind. Jennifer Grinnell is working the table out there, and her colleague Rachel Larkin will be on the panel. She'll be a panelist after the second film screening. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. No excuses this time. The last time we had a premiere here 3 years ago, the weather was, I think the umbrellas were turning upside down. Was that this one, or maybe it was the one before that? I don't know. But anyway, grateful that you're all here tonight. I know there are so many events now that people are back doing live things, and I'm just grateful that you chose to come out tonight for this event, because it's a very special evening for us. I am really happy to have our producing director, Angela Cohen, in the house with Charlie Bear Productions. And these two films you're going to see tonight are very special, and both a labor of love, as all Glow Media films are. The first film you're going to see, Unimaginable, we filmed during COVID. We were ready to film the film you'll see after this one, There Can Be Light, but then COVID hit and the world shut down and we were unable to film on set. So we said, what are we going to do? Well, let's take advantage of what's happening in the world right now and do what we do best, which is take the pulse of American teenagers and see how they're feeling about the pandemic. And so that is Unimaginable. We interviewed 27 students from all different areas across the country, and we followed them with a series of Zoom calls and video diaries to sort of find out what they were feeling, what they liked about the pandemic, what they really didn't like, and how they were coping with their new normal. So that's what you're going to see first. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in, and I give you Unimaginable.
That motivation to go to school and do well was just gone.
That was my last day, but I didn't know that it was my last day.
Normal just got taken away.
I like to pretend like it didn't happen.
Feeling hopeless and sort of disconnected.
It takes more of a toll on your mental health than you realize.
I lost people during the pandemic, and I just wanted to give up at one point.
I felt really powerless, and I kind of felt like I was screaming into a void.
I feel like I don't know what's gonna happen next.
Crazy.
Chaotic.
Remarkable.
Lonely.
Eye-opening.
Confusing. Empowering.
Overwhelming.
Change. Reality.
Uncertain.
Unimaginable.
So that was Unimaginable. And the next film we're going to see tonight is titled There Can Be Light. You can see from the poster there. And this film has been 3 years in the making. Before COVID, this was the next film that we were going to produce in our library of shorts addressing various mental health topics. And unfortunately, we couldn't do it because COVID shut down the world. And at the time, we were trying to collaborate with a couple of different school systems to produce this film. At the time, the school system said, no, thank you. We don't have a suicide problem at our school. It is not a problem, and it's not something we want to address. Fast forward, now they're coming to us saying, oh yeah, that suicide film, can we look at it now? We've had a rise in attempts. We've had a dramatic increase in reports of depression and anxiety amongst our student body, and we think that maybe it is time now to look at a film like this. We took very, very special care in creating this film, writing this film, and had the script reviewed by, Angela, how many psychologists, educators reviewed this film? A lot. 15 to 20. And we took their advice, and we used their curriculum. We used a lot of their data in the curriculum. We wanted to get this right. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Netflix film 13 Reasons Why. Does that ring any bells? That was very, very popular about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I don't know, with the youth. And it sparked a contagion, a suicide contagion, copycats. It was stylistically very well done, but a little, well, it wasn't going to be shown at a school, let's put it that way. There were no trigger warnings or anything, and There Can Be Light is sort of the antithesis of 13 Reasons Why, and it is a film Angela and I are both very proud of, and we are happy that we have had so much support for this, and we hope it will be shown in the schools. Let me just give you a couple of startling stats before we get into it. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for teens and young adults ages 10 to 34. 18.8% of high school students reported having seriously considered suicide in the past year. This percentage is higher among females and lesbian, gay, or bisexual teens. 8.9% of high school students attempted suicide in the past year. This percentage, again, is highest among females, black teens, and lesbian, gay, or bisexual teens. These are 2020 numbers, so this is pretty fresh data. Anyway, we want those numbers to go down, and it needs to be talked about in the home and in school in a safe environment with a curriculum that has been vetted by experts. So I give you There Can Be Light.
You're not okay. Let's go home.
I know it's been a hard time for everyone. Mr. Sanchez would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Coach Harper. I just wanted to take a few minutes to check in with you all.
That was the first time I saw that on the big screen, too. Pretty powerful, and I actually wish we were in the classroom. I would like to dive right into the curriculum with you all, because, which we are not going to do because we don't have time for that tonight. But just to give you a taste of the kind of things that an educator would be addressing in this film, they would talk about things that might have been uncomfortable for you to watch, such as Jason in the classroom saying, "Hey, could I have his car?" I mean, what a jerk. Who would say that? But that's actually a normal reaction for some people in this case, in a case of a suicide. I don't know, there's so many other incidents that I could reference and talk about. But rather than get into that tonight, we are going to have a I'm going to invite the panelists up, please. You know who you are. Please come on up and join us on stage, and I will introduce you as you're coming up. We have with us tonight Rachel Larkin. Rachel is the Director of Hotline Outreach and Partnerships at EveryMind. She's a licensed certified social worker who's something the 24/7, sorry, my printer went out a little bit. The Montgomery County Hotline she's worked the Montgomery County Hotline for more than 15 years. This American Association of Suicidology accredited program is part of the 988 National Suicide Prevention Lifeline Network. Rachel has an MSW from the National Catholic School of Social Service and an MA from Vanderbilt University. She speaks throughout the state on mental health and suicide and spent 7 years as a trainer for the Mental Health First Aid Program. Welcome, Rachel. We have Chris Russell. Chris Russell is a senior at Sidwell Friends School. He is a co-head for the Meditation Club at Sidwell, a member of the Black Student Union, and a 3-season athlete, currently playing a lot of football. Welcome, Chris. Gosh, y'all lined up in the proper order as I'm going through this. Kassan Holmes is a licensed clinical psychologist. She received her bachelor's degree from Howard University and master's and PhD in clinical psychology from American University. She has worked in a variety of settings and across different ages, from working with children in hospital settings, active duty service members who are struggling with suicidal thoughts and behaviors, and teens and adults struggling with anxiety and depression in private practice. She has completed specialized training in anxiety disorders treatment and dialectical behavioral therapy, and often integrates mindfulness into the practice of psychology. She currently works part-time as a school psychologist at Sidwell, where she co-clerks a school-wide task force designed to reassess and meet the needs of students post-pandemic, and has a private practice focused on evidence-based treatments for teens and adults. She enjoys spending time outdoors with her family and chasing after her young girls. Welcome, Kassan. Angela Cohen is an established producer with films sold to MGM, Orion, and Shorts TV. She also writes and directs dramatic branded content and narrative series. She shadowed David Gordon Green on the set of NBC's comedy There's Johnny, Jason Ensler on Hulu's Love, Victor, and her work as an actress includes comedic legends Tina Fey and Amy Poehler. She was handpicked to be part of Google's Jumpstart initiative, and her virtual reality film, The Art of Saving a Life, advanced to the final round of the Sundance New Frontier Labs. Angela founded Charlie Bear Productions with a vision to create a shift in perspective, telling unique and diverse stories that showcase women in front of and behind the camera. Through Charlie Bear, she wrote, produced, and starred in Without Grace, opposite Emmy Award-winning actress Ann Dowd of The Handmaid's Tale and John Doman of The Wire. The film qualified for the 90th Annual Academy Awards, released on Amazon after a successful charitable fundraiser for NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, and is being adapted into a half-hour dramedy for television. And now she's a producing director at the moment for the Glow Media Project. Welcome, Angela. I'm going to come over and join you now. Please be seated. Are we on? We are. So this could be a little tricky because I'm sure you have specific questions, and I'd like to address specific issues to each film. But we're going to be a little bit more general, and we will have a Q&A period following the discussion. We have microphones set up on either side. Also in your programs tonight, there are 2 surveys, one for each film. If you can complete them, pencils will be distributed. I think Craig's at it right now. Thank you, Craig. If you could fill those out, it would really help us as we move forward with our next film topics and whatnot. Okay, so I'm going to start off with Chris. Chris, how have you been impacted by the pandemic? How was it for you early on, and how is it for you now?
2 years ago, when I was, a sophomore, The pandemic began as a 1 week off, and then it later became 1 month off, and then basically the whole school year was basically off. I, me personally, I'm an outsider. I'm never really at home. I like to do a lot of things outside of my home. Like to hang out with friends, do different things like that. But I think the pandemic definitely impacted me because it made me more of like a social media person, staying at home consistently, looking at social media. It was basically my eyes glued to the screen the whole time, basically.
Yeah, I saw a lot of that too. Kassan, as the school psychologist, what was it like for you with your student body all remote in little boxes? How was that for you?
Well, I would say it was a mixed bag. In some ways, Zoom allowed us to still connect and still have productive meetings. So that felt great for the students that I was able to connect with, especially even compared to when we went back in person. Having masks, you kind of lose a lot in my profession in terms of facial expression. So I think we were able to adapt well once I got a student onto the Zoom screen. The really hard part was a lot of my work prior to the pandemic was being out in the community, kids seeing my faces, feeling comfortable, stopping by, getting candy from my office. So it was hard not being able to reach as many students as we needed to during the pandemic.
I'll bet that was very hard for you. Angela, we talked to a lot of teens. I know we're not educators, but we were looking at it from a different angle. And I think you and I were both it was enlightening to meet these kids. Share a little bit about what that was like for you to get to know particularly these three young women.
Well, it gave me a lot of purpose during the pandemic. I personally have asthma. I would have normally been at a food bank passing out food, and I felt very helpless. Don't make me cry again. I have tears all over my face. I've seen those films so many times, you guys. They still make me cry. Those kids mean so much to me.
It was really powerful to be welcomed into their homes and to have them trust us with their stories. They really shared some pretty deep stuff. It was interesting. Next question is for Rachel. Rachel, we've talked about the kids. What was it like that we've heard from a student in a classroom? What was it like out in the community? Because you're on the front lines of a mental health organization. What was it like for you during the pandemic?
Well, on the hotline, we saw a tremendous rise in people reaching out. Like, it never seen an increase quite like that from the start. And I think people really needed to talk. And because they're missing the face-to-face, kids in particular, when you are in high school and in middle school, it is extremely important to have those social interactions to your growth, your mental wellness. And that, a lot of people were missing that, but particularly young people. And so they were reaching out in droves. And I'm glad that, we could be a safe place for them to reach out and to talk and safe medium as well.
And how were you able to pivot it as an organization? How were you able to pivot from the work you did every day to online?
Well, we were already doing chat and text at that time, so we were already available on that medium, and it was just a question of getting new technology to be able to take phones off site. And our folks that answer the lines were absolutely amazing. Nobody missed a shift. Nobody had second thoughts because the need was there, and we as an entire planet were and are still struggling as a result of this pandemic. And we did what we had to do to stay safe, but we're going to be feeling the mental health impact for this for decades to come. And particularly, this young man's generation, had an impact that we can't possibly imagine. And we'll be learning from them. And I really love that you showed these two movies in the order that you did, because I feel like, they play so nicely together to show just the emotional impact, and then how that emotional impact can really translate into pain and the impact it has made on an entire group of young people.
Thank you for saying that about the two films together. We intentionally waited to film There Can Be Light until COVID restrictions had been lifted because we did not want it to be a COVID film. So it will always be about suicide prevention and postvention. Kassan, what, sort of piggybacking on what Rachel said, how they pivoted, but they didn't really have to pivot because it was text and chat all along, but you had to reinvent the wheel for reaching these kids. And then I want to talk to Chris about how he, a little bit more about that. But how did you do it, and did you think it was effective for the student body?
That's a hard question. I know. Well, thankfully at my school, there's a wonderful team. So in the upper school, there's an IT person whose job in part is to help teachers with using technology in the classroom and educators. And so, I mean, she's very talented and passionate about education. And so she was able to get us up and running right away. So we were able to pivot to Zoom right away, but I think we found out pretty quickly that kids didn't want to be on Zoom for 7 hours a day. So we were flexible and adaptable and had the resources and infrastructure and support to be able to do that. So it was really, really hard, but we were also in a privileged position to be at a school that had a lot of resources. That said, I think the hardest part for me in my profession is that I don't think it was enough for our kids. I think the hard part was fighting against nature, and I think you showed that so well in your film about the pandemic, and that isolation that you could see. We're social beings, and we were all craving physical touch even. We had some losses in our community, and one of the hard things we had to, when we were still in quarantine and in distance learning, was that it was this hybrid model, so we were flexing and adapting, and that we couldn't be there to hug each other. So those are very hard times. I think when we look back on these times, it will look even harder because I think we all had to adjust and learn to just live with what we had in the moment. And so I think we became a little bit desensitized to it. But it was a very tough thing. And I definitely feel for our students who had to go through that in such an important part of their lives and development.
Thank you. I also feel, I feel that we've seen a lot of this from educators and whatnot, that the schools are now taking a greater interest in their students' mental health, where they weren't necessarily, it wasn't necessarily top of mind or top of budget ever. Now it is. And Chris, we've been talking about you, your generation. You know, the pandemic is on your shoulders. And tell us a little bit about some of the coping mechanisms you employed to help you get through it. Talk about your meditation club. Did you start that after the pandemic or before?
So we started the meditation club before the pandemic, and I've been ahead for like 3 years now. And during the pandemic, I feel like we really relied on the meditation club, as a couple of my friends I know and others from my school joined the club to basically sit in sort of like a silence way for like 10 minutes and listen to a podcaster talk about ways to kind of like cope and like this thing. So I think it's more like a stress reliever sort of club. And I feel like it was very necessary because, you know, not knowing a lot about people's personal details, but I feel like everyone can like think about their own and like have their own space to think about it. Sort of like their own bubble in a sort of way.
Well, it sounds like you were well equipped for the pandemic going in. You already had your meditation club. That's pretty cool. Angela, what were some of the, I'm trying to think of some of the other kids that we interviewed for this, but aside from the 3 who made it into the final cut, what were some of the other coping mechanisms that you found most interesting with these kids?
Definitely Ethan. He practiced origami. He was very deft at it.
Forgot about Ethan.
Ethan.
He didn't make the final cut.
No, he was adorable. So many of the kids, adults, they're teenagers, right? Hard to say as a kid. They're experiencing really adult things, and that's another thing. It's kind of like, how do you're thrusting kids into this adult situation without the coping tools that they need, right? And then it's left to people like these women who are doing such incredible work to try to implement those tools in a very heightened scenario. What I found most fascinating about those 3 kids and also some of the other boys who we interviewed, they played guitar, one escaped their video games. They found art in a really interesting way. They hadn't been taught art healing, right? They had never been to art therapy. They didn't have access to that. It was fascinating to me that they just organically sort of drifted to this place where their mind could relax. And I thought that was really intuitive and special. And I was shocked, amazed, and thrilled at how many of them did that, because the arts are so underfunded in our education programs. And they're so, for lack of a better word, my mother wanted me to be a doctor. So, it's this stereotypical, go into this field where you think you're going to make a lot of money and you're going to find this path that's very linear. And life, as we all know, is just not linear, right? No matter what path you choose. And so for these kids to sort of hone in on some of these other really special opportunities, one woman actually, one young woman created a pen pal system where everyone wrote letters to one another, really old school style, right? Like literal pen to paper letters, and started sending them throughout the mail. And then they each wrote letters to each other. Each person who received it wrote another letter to each other, and
Like a chain.
yeah, sort of like Post Secret, only it wasn't a secret, right? And they, I can't remember the name of the project, but it ended up on the Mighty, which is a web-based mental health teen program, and it was fascinating. I loved how constraints make us creative, and I think that where we see this trauma that we've all collectively experienced, we also can see this great rising up. And very similarly to, the Black Plague and then the Renaissance, we see this creative nature come out of people because they had to, right? They were left to their own devices and they didn't have other options. And so I'm really excited to see what comes next.
Then I think our next documentary might be fast forwarding 5 years to interview these people again. And I will add Chris to the list. See how you're doing, how resilient you are. Okay, I want to pivot now and go to the second film. And I want to start with something we added to the film. And I do believe we are one of the first films to promote the use of the new 988 crisis line. How many people in the audience tonight are familiar with that?
More than I would have thought.
Very decent show of hands. Very decent show of hands. Thank you. I would like Rachel Larkin to speak to that program a little bit. She's well-versed in it, an expert, and to talk a little bit about the rollout and how it's been effective here.
Great. So 98 actually isn't a new service. It's a new way to reach an old service. We've been answering suicide calls since it was 1-800-SUICIDE. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline's been around since about 2005, but it was a 1-800 number. And I don't know if any one of you has ever been in a mental health crisis, but the last thing you want to do when you are overwhelmed, can barely keep your head up, you can barely take the next step forward, is look up a 1-800 number, right? So the whole point of 988 was that the federal government wanted something easy to remember like 911. You get in an accident, you know to call 911. And that's what the whole point of 988 is, so that you are in a crisis with your mental wellness and you call 988. Except you don't have to be in crisis. You can just be having a bad day or just need to talk. And 988 is great because you can reach it by phone, for those of you that still use the phone, text or chat. And it's great because you need to reach out to a caring person when you're in need. And it could be 3 o'clock in the morning. People reach out for us, during class. I'm not saying that you should. You pay attention. But if you're overwhelmed by the physics test that's coming up, or you're being bullied, or whatever is going on, you can send a text and have somebody caring, well-trained, reach out and respond. And it can be a part of, good coping strategies like a meditation club. And it can be part of, this generation, self-care isn't just a throw around word. They actually do it. And you see it in the movie, the baking, the art, the things like that. They're really doing it and taking care of themselves. So it's just another part of what we have as a coping mechanism for this nation, who is desperately in need of ways to cope.
Thank you. And you mentioned the coping skills that the kids have, and Chris, you and your generation are so much better equipped than we were, than my children were, who are a lot older than you, but not that much older than you. I'm just going to share a little story. I was talking with a friend last weekend, and she was talking about her adult child, who was having some trouble with his mental health. And she said, should he tell his employer? I was like, no. She said, wait, why are you saying that? You're all about mental health. I said, yeah, I'm not sure that his employer's ready to hear that yet. She said, well, why are you doing what you do? I said, we're baby stepping into it. We're getting there. Chris's generation, when he's in a job, when he's 25, 26, he's going to be able to go to his employer and say, I need a mental health day. I need a reset. I need a break. And he's not going to be fired. And that's because we're doing this kind of work in the schools now. It's been a long time coming, but I think we're making progress. Hassan, would you agree?
Absolutely. One thing that I'm encouraged by is, so I've been the upper school psychologist this is my 7th year. We had one mental health club to start, and we've grown to now this year 5. And the students are doing the work. And one of the reasons I asked Chris to come today was how quickly they pivoted his club. So they were one of the few clubs to go and still meet online. And they met, you guys met like within the first couple of weeks of being in distance learning, and created a space of community for students before you guys were really struggling, I would say, had soaked in the shock of what was actually happening before we knew how long we would be isolated. You guys were already proactively reaching out and taking care of yourselves. And out of that, I know we just now have a boys and mental health club. We have one geared to girls and other things. So that's the one thing that makes me feel hopeful. I feel bad that you guys have to fix so many things about society. But I wish now I knew who said this, but they were saying that one of the biggest evolutions of our time and our lifetime that we'll see is the focus on mental health, and that it's now this thing that every individual is responsible for taking care of. And I also think that now we're pivoting towards communities being responsible for taking care of each other and being connected and collectively taking care of mental health.
Well said. I'm gonna ask a couple more questions, then we're gonna open it up to audience questions. Angela, when we were filming There Can Be Light, and we were dealing with a lot of the students on set. We filmed in collaboration with a high school outside of Los Angeles, and it was a very rewarding experience. It was hard as hell. But tell us a little bit about some of the student participation, maybe the shadows or that sort of thing.
Yeah. So mentorship's really important to me, and it's something that I love about Trish and the Glow Media Project and their mission, because it's really important to them. And we not only employed the students those were all football players at the school, outside of our lead, Jason. Those were all the cheerleaders at the school. They showed up, right? They were excited to participate, which was huge. And because there were a lot of kids who showed up for pizza and left, right? Who were going to be in the stands. But these kids were engaged. They were excited. They wanted to be a part of it. They were excited about the purpose and the mission. And then we planned on having a few shadows for different positions on set. So producer.
Student shadows.
Student shadows, yeah. So students from the school in the film program who were really excited about being part of a film community, who then shadowed our professional crew. Had one young woman in particular who you actually saw pretty featured. She's one of the cheerleaders. Saw what I was doing behind the scenes, and she went up to Trish and she said, "Well, what's that woman's job?" She said, "Well, that's the director." And she said, "Well, I didn't know that women could be directors." And it took my breath away, right? And that's part of why I do what I do. So she ended up shadowing me the next day, and then she came out for our premiere.
She was there last Saturday.
And she was so excited. And what a little hustler. She showed up. She's taken phone numbers of the other writer-directors that I brought. I was like, meet everybody, talk to everybody. This is how you do it. And she's still really excited about being a director. And it just brought me so much hope because these kids were so engaged and they care, right? And we saw the impact immediately. So if you're helping one kid, I mean, that's all that matters, right? But obviously our goal is really to get this implemented into the school system and to some other platforms where people can really benefit from it, whether it's Hulu or Netflix or even just to Discovery Education, that sort of thing. Because where there's one, there's many.
And I think that we had such great student participation for this film out in LA because of the student faculty. They were unbelievable. Hassan, I don't know if I told you this, but it was a school of 2,000, high school of 2,000. They have 14 school counselors, 14 school psychologists. Hassan is one of 2 at her school. 1.5, right? Something like that. 1.6. That being said, I think the love is there at Sidwell as well as I think Chris can state. If you had a problem at school, Chris, if you needed to talk to somebody, you were having a bad day, would you know where to go? Would you feel comfortable going to a teacher or maybe Kassan?
Yeah, I definitely think there's so many teachers, faculty members at Sidwell that are like open-handed and like you can just talk to any time. Even like college counselors, they're always, my college counselor, Ms. Fields, like she always says, stop by anytime, Friday's open day. So I feel like there's definitely any faculty member at Sidwell you can always stop by and talk to, no matter what the topic is, really.
Well, that's awesome. I'm guessing Rachel sees a little bit more on the other side. Kids coming from schools where they're not feeling as comfortable.
I was just at a conference today, and some school systems have one psychologist for 1,500 students.
First of all, thank you, Trish, for all your leadership in addressing these really tough issues, and for all the panelists and your honest and thoughtful comments. My question for you, mental health in our country, addiction, suicide, these are all connected, and they're all complex issues. If you could change one thing in how our nation addresses this and our leaders address this, what would that be?
Where do we start? We could go all night.
Rachel, you want to take it?
I'm actually thrilled how this nation is addressing this right now. We have seen tremendous support in the past 6 months for the hotlines, for suicide prevention. But what I would love to see is that this is a conversation that people are not afraid to have anymore. Every day I get asked, if I talk to my friends, my spouse, my whoever about this, will I give them the idea? You will not give them the idea. The only possible way to prevent suicide is to talk about it. And conversation starters like these movies make a huge difference. So that is the number one change I would like to see, is conversations, ongoing conversations about suicide.
Hear, hear. Anything to add? Anybody?
I would say one thing, putting on my hat as a practitioner in private practice, is that mental health is not funded equally in comparison to, and we don't make this distinction at the school, but other health conditions. So there's a lot of disparity there, and so a lot of us are not accepting insurance which means that a lot of people don't have access to mental health care. I do think there are more high-profile celebrities and just our youth in general are becoming more comfortable with seeking help, but that help is not available because it's expensive and not accessible, and the those who do accept insurance, that line is very long. And there's also a big gap in between the point, if you are in a point of crisis, I do think the 988 number is amazing to have access to someone to reach immediately. But then if you're in kind of this limbo of not necessarily safe to be an outpatient and once a week type of therapy, and you need something more intensive, trying to get access to more intensive care and then stepping down to an outside provider is also this, it's not seamless. It's hard to get into. There aren't enough resources to be able to expediently give care to people who need it.
I would like to add something, because I think something that you said really resonated with me is, and it's one of the reasons I do what I do, which is really that storytelling creates change. We're born and bred into a society and a culture of storytelling, right? We move through our lives telling stories, whether we're staying in the hallway, having dinner with a friend. We relate to them. We watch them to empathize. We utilize them to process our feelings when we don't feel like we can articulate them and talk about them to other people. And this is I shouldn't say it's the only country, but this is one of the few countries that has no existing public funding for filmmaking. If you look at any country in Europe, you look at Canada, they all have public support for filmmakers. And
why don't we go there?
We should go there. Right? And it's political, right? It's not easy necessarily to access that funding, but the government's supporting it, right? So if anything, I would say I would love to see more public funding, but frankly, then it trickles down to our society, and as do many things in our very capitalist society, which is then private donors. And a lot of you are those people right now. So I want to thank all of you who are here. And you just spreading the word to people that you know who are also passionate about these things, donating to the Glow Media Project and the work that Charlie Ray Productions does with them and the work that they do and their curriculum makes a difference. And until we have that public funding, the private sector is all there is.
Thanks for that plug. Lovely. I think we have time for one more question. Oh, did you have one over here?
I have one over here.
Okay.
Hi. Yes. Chris, the only male up there. The athlete. I am fascinated and thrilled that a young man, a big jock, would acknowledge that there is a need for, I'm not going to call it mental health. I'm going to call it wellness. So I have a 32-year-old son. He's a Marine. Boy, are they tough. I'm really encouraged that your generation is willing to pursue these conversations and these opportunities in openness. Is this because I'm dealing with a young jock from Sidwell, or am I looking at something that I hope is much more universal? Particularly young, athletic males, the macho culture that has historically said, I'm fine, I'm just fine, I'm just fine.
That's a great question. I would say, I answer a lot of questions honestly. Comparing myself to others, I feel like maybe it could be part of this generation coming up as males express themselves and not to say that they're fine. Maybe more of they explain of what's actually going on, no, I'm not fine. Because it's rare to hear someone say, no, I'm not fine. You ask how they're doing, I'm good. That's the most normal response. You can ask anyone probably in this room right now and they say, I'm good. But in reality, when they get home, they have a lot of more things that are problems or stuff going on. But I do think that, I do honestly believe that this generation is more opened up and more honest than previous generations.
I thank you, and I've got a few Marine bases. I want him on tour.
Yeah, Chris is applying to Ivy League schools. We're hoping, we actually know he's going to get into one or more.
There's probably a few recommendations in the room if
Just a few. Listen, that's it for tonight, folks. We can continue the conversation outside. I'd like to thank Panera Bread for our lovely refreshments, which will be waiting for us. The bar is open. I'd really like to thank Juliette Birch of AFI. This woman does everything. She's been fabulous. Craig Stapert is here with Glow Media, Bobby Ross, our photographer. And thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, panelists. I value you. I appreciate you so much. I love it.
Jerome Adams. He
That was so impactful and really has the capacity to make a huge difference in the lives of our young people. I wish it had been available when I was in school. I felt so alone in my crises and traumas, and I felt that I had no safe adults in my life. My son, who is now in his 20s, has had suicidal ideation, and I was a hovering parent because I knew on some level he was in trouble, and we got him health care. But I have resources and not everyone does. I'm so thankful to Glow Media for raising awareness of hot button issues that will save a lot of lives. So thank you, Trish Glowacki and Glow Media. I speak in sound bites.
I love it.
As a mother of young people, and my children are a little bit older, but the fact that what they were going through as young people, and the fact that they didn't feel as though they could talk to anyone as parents. Now, it raises a question to me to go home to my children and ask the question, how did that affect you all? What were you thinking? What were you going through? It's a little bit late to do it, but we can still have that conversation. My daughter, I'm fine, Mom. But as a parent, you kind of know this generation may feel as though they can talk to their parents now. But they don't have to keep it bottled in that
You're right.
Mom's here. And if Mom can't answer the question, she can get you the help that you need. And it's okay.
Right.
It's okay.
Right. Yeah. You may not have all the answers, but you know where to go to get them.
And most of all, it's okay to feel like this. It's nothing wrong. Nothing that you did that was wrong. It's okay.
Thank you.
Well, the one thing I will say in the suicide film, there was the constant outreach you saw by the sister and the school counselor to say, I'm here. I'm here.
You're not alone.
You're not.
I've had those feelings. This is not.
Yeah.
You're not. Yes. You're
you know
not
what I'm
alone.
saying? You're not alone. It's just more, you know.
That's the hard thing about having a private practice, you know?
I would probably say the last time I actually spoke to like an audience or like singing in front of an audience was like elementary school. 5th grade, 4th grade, those were the good times, you know. I used to be in a choir, used to sing, parents and fellow peers back then. But it hasn't been a while.
Well, as a friend of Trish's, I'm kind of biased, but I think it's really interesting to me as a parent of two kids who didn't suffer like a high school kid in the pandemic, but they were in college, to see the effects of younger kids and how we know it's going to last for a few more years. And I think this is a story that's going to be told for a long time. I'm happy to see it up on the big screen here to start that process of understanding it and hopefully healing along with it.
It was very powerful to me because as my mindset now as an adult, I think is that we're out of it, like we're done, like this pandemic is in the past. And this to me was kind of like a reminder, well, we're not really out of like the effects of it, the after effects and the long-term effects of it all. And this brought it to me, this brought it to me home to me that kids really suffered through this and they're still going to suffer.
I appreciate the relatability because I know there was a criticism that it didn't touch on drug use or suicide quite well. The second film did, but and I feel like it was very relatable to more students who are like, well, maybe I don't need to talk to a counselor because I'm not struggling with drug use. I'm just feeling lonely or this. So I actually appreciated that it didn't touch on those things and made everyone feel like in their own world they were alone or whatever they were feeling was natural. And it broke my heart when the girl said I can't go to school because of the outbreaks and I'm going to community college and there's crime. Like, it broke my heart. Yeah.
When you're at that age, a lot of people have such big plans that they've been making for the last 10 years or whatever, and then boom, it's gone in 3 months. What do you do?
What is it?
Well, we're talking about a range of issues right now related to children and adults, and what we really appreciate is that it's a conversation starter whenever you've seen something that Trish is doing, and it's amazing how many issues just aren't even about teens, it's about the human condition.
What does that mean? So resourceful. Trying to pull people out of the woodwork to come. All the people.
Although she did that very well.
Yeah, she does do that well.
Yes, I have met some amazing people along the way.
Multi-talented.
Yeah. To create, yes.
How did you feel seeing it on the big screen?
I was blown away because that was my first time for both films on the big screen. They look pretty good.
Yeah, they really better than pretty good.
It's hard enough when you can take them to the park or send them to grandma's house or do whatever, but when you couldn't do those things, you can't do it.
Right.